Hi, I'm Rachel New, dating and relationships coach, and today I'd like to talk to you about ghosting. If you'd like to understand more of why people ghost, I have 5 hypotheses for you. So I'm defining ghosting as the abrupt, unexplained end to all communication by one person in a relationship or in a dating experience. When we get ghosted, we may feel very confused and have a strong desire to try and understand the ghostee's behaviour, to try and find patterns and to categorise them, and that's so that we feel a little bit more control in a situation where somebody else has made a decision without us. And maybe we want to try to learn how we could do things differently next time, or to avoid similar people. And this is understandable. We want to feel empowered when we're dating, rather than being at the whim of others. Sometimes people feel hurt, sad, or angry when they get ghosted, but not everyone has negative emotions after being ghosted. It depends on their previous experiences, maybe on their attachment style. They might feel relief because the feeling was mutual, for example. But if you do have negative emotions, it's important to take time to care for yourself and maybe to identify what your needs were in that kind of situation, whether it's after 1 or 2 dates or later in the dating process or even into a relationship. So take some time to acknowledge your feelings, perhaps explore whether they're triggering past experiences, and be kind to yourself. So let's get on to why people ghost and my 5 hypotheses. Research shows that people who have been ghosted in the past are more likely to ghost. This is because ghosting becomes more socially acceptable when you observe it happening in the dating world, and so you give yourself permission to do it. So that explains why it has become a common way to end a dating experience. But I'm sure that you'd like to have some explanations for why people do it in particular cases. So here are my 5 hypotheses. The first hypothesis I'm calling the healthy ghosting explanation. This is when your date has tried to express their needs or dissatisfaction with the relationship many times, but you just won't listen or act. Maybe you became defensive or disagreed with them. Maybe you minimised or dismissed their needs. Maybe you just won't let them end the relationship. Maybe you're too clingy. Maybe they think that you'll stalk them or make life difficult for them. So the safest and healthiest thing is actually to ghost you and possibly to block you. So in a way, this isn't ghosting because they've already tried to say why they're not happy, but I'm including it because it's a common reason that people give for ghosting in research. Because people often feel guilty about doing it, even when they've tried to express their needs, because they're cutting off communication completely. So if you have done this to somebody else, then you might not need to feel bad about it. So the second hypothesis is the not relationship ready hypothesis. So this is when the ghoster is just not ready for a relationship. Maybe they have attachment challenges or difficult circumstances. Maybe they feel pressurised into expressing their feelings too soon when they're not sure about how they feel. Maybe they can't cope with the uncertainty of not knowing how they feel. Maybe they feel too uncomfortable with being close to someone, which would be an attachment issue. So they run away. They can't handle the discomfort or the anxiety, and the only way that they know how to get relief from their discomfort is by shutting it down completely. Now, they might feel bad about that even if they do it. There's a great study on ghosting that was published in 2024 in the Journal of Social Psychology, where there's participants giving reasons why they ghosted and others describing their experiences of being ghosted. So for the ones that said why they did the ghosting, there's lots of really interesting reasons, and one of the participants said it was a combination of relief and guilt. I was happy to not have to interact anymore, but I feel bad about how I went about it. So you can see there, they're feeling the relief from the anxiety or the discomfort, but they are feeling bad. So if that's happened to you, you can have a bit of empathy perhaps for somebody's anxiety, but you can also maybe take consolation in the fact that they felt bad about it. And if you've ever felt high levels of anxiety, you'll know how it feels when you're so desperate to escape that anxiety. You'll do whatever it takes and whatever is familiar, which is running away or avoiding the situation. So if you can empathise with this, it might be easier to handle it when you get ghosted, if you think that might be the reason. Okay, the third hypothesis is the lack of emotional intelligence explanation. Maybe the ghoster doesn't have the vocabulary to explain their feelings. They might not have been brought up in a household where emotions were talked about, or they might not be so good at having insight into why they want to end things. In the study on ghosting, ghosters gave reasons such as, I'm not good at disappointing people, and I don't know how to say no. So these people might not feel very much confidence in their ability to end things well. They might actually think they're going to make things worse if they try and explain, and that ghosting is actually the best way for them. They might also be afraid of how you're going to react and not know how to handle that. It might relate to their upbringing. Perhaps their caregivers got angry with them or punished them if they tried to say no to things. Related to this is the fear that if the relationship continues, they might disappoint you or cause you suffering. They might believe it's better to end things now while things are good, rather than let things get worse and worse. They don't feel good about their ability to create a happy relationship. They don't know how to communicate that fear, and so they go to a familiar pattern, which is to ghost. So the fourth hypothesis is the Schrödinger's cat explanation. This is where they are ambivalent. They don't know what they want. They're afraid to shut things down completely in case they've made a mistake, but they aren't enjoying the dating or the relationship either. So they put things on hold, pretending to themselves that they've just pressed pause on the timeline and can start it up again whenever they like. Like Schrödinger's cat in the famous thought experiment, the relationship is neither dead nor alive until you do something. They keep their options open, but at some point it becomes too late to message. The fifth hypothesis is the mismatch of aftercare packages explanation. This happens when two people have become intimate and one ghosts the other after the intimacy. And then there is a mismatch of expectations about what happens after you've been sexually intimate. So the ghoster thinks of an intimate sexual experience as a kind of package where you're very closely connected at the time. Maybe they give you lots of compliments, they're very attentive, they're very caring, maybe things are quite intense and passionate. Things are said that are part of a romantic script. You're made to feel special, but they consider it normal for all of this to end when they leave. Imagine that you had a professional massage. You would be cared for at the time, but you wouldn't expect any aftercare like follow-up messages or to be massaged again if you bumped into each other. So for the ghoster, the job has been completed and there is no responsibility to offer any aftercare. They meant what they said at the time because this was part of the script or package, but they don't see anything incongruous about this ending as soon as they leave. Even promising to message or call later can be part of that script. And it doesn't mean that it's an act. They really did genuinely mean it at the time. Now for you, the person being ghosted, this feels bewildering because you had a different script. Your package involved aftercare. You would hope for perhaps a warm message afterwards or even another date or an explanation for why they don't want to have another date. So you didn't discuss it before, and so you both assume that you have the same blueprint for your package of sexual intimacy. And if they were especially good at their package, there's even more disappointment and confusion because the warmth and closeness that you had during the experience have been abruptly withdrawn. So those are the 5 hypotheses. Number 1 was the healthy ghosting hypothesis. Number 2 was not being relationship ready. Number 3 was not having the emotional vocabulary or emotional intelligence. And the 4th one was the Schrödinger's cat one, where you keep your options open. And the 5th one was a mismatch of aftercare packages. So your situation might not be exactly like any of these explanations, but hopefully you'll be able to see some similarities. Maybe yours is a mixture of several of them, or some kind of edit of one of them. Anyway, I hope it helps you to understand what it might be like to be the other person doing the ghosting, and therefore to feel comforted and more empowered in your dating.